We're in Daf Mem Tes at the bottom of the Amud. 2 lines from the bottom where it says Kemaseyu b'choil. So this is speaking about Nisuch HaMayim. So when they went to draw the water, even if they were doing it on Shabbos, so the Mishnah says everything on Shabbos is done the same like it's done on the weekday. The only difference is that for Shabbos you have to draw the water before Shabbos. And the Mishnah said that you have to draw it with a jug that was not sanctified to be from the Kli Sharis. It can't be a Kli Sharis. Why not? That's what the Gemara will explain now. Ve'amai, why not? Naisi b'mekudeshes. Why can't they bring the water before Shabbos with a keli that was sanctified to be from the Kli Sharis? What's the issue? Amar Zeiri, so Zeiri answers, Kasavar, the Tana of our Mishnah holds, Ein shiur l'mayim. There's no amount of water, there's no maximum of the amount of water that is used for the Nisuch HaMayim. Right? So in other words, it said in the Mishnah that the water that you use is 3 lugin. That's the amount. But 3 lugin is the minimum, not the maximum. You could have more than 3 lugin. You could have whatever water you put in and you pour in the mizbeach, it's all part of the mitzvah of Nisuch HaMayim. So there's no maximum. Another point, ukli sharis mekachin shaloi medas. When you place water, in this case, or anything, into a kli sharis, even if you're not placing it inside with the intention, in order to sanctify it, that it should become Kaddish, the Kedusha of the carbon, it doesn't matter. Your intention doesn't matter. Even if you don't have that intention, automatically, when you place it into the keli, it becomes Kaddish, with the Kedusha, as like Rashi calls it a Kedusha Saguf. It becomes like the very water itself, in this case, becomes Kaddish. So if so, what's the issue? If you're going to bring the water on Erev Shabbos with this Kli Sharis, which is already sanctified as a Kli Sharis, and the water inside becomes sanctified as well, if Silu Lahu Belina, so now this water will be possible to be used the next day for the mitzvah because it's overnight, it remains overnight in this water. If it remains overnight, this is something that passes a carbon. As Rashi here brings, Rashi actually does not bring the pasuk, but this is the halacha by the karbonis that anything that remains overnight becomes pasul. So therefore you can't bring it in a kli sharis, because then it's like a carbon that has kedusha, and any carbon that remains overnight is pasul. So therefore you have to bring it in a keli that has no kedusha. So therefore it doesn't have the kedusha saguf, and it doesn't become pasul when it remains overnight. Chizkiya says a different shot. That the issue over here is not that min atayre it's going to actually become pasul, but it's a gzeira midrabanan. What's the gzeira? Kli sharis ein mekachin ela midas. Even if you're going to say that really the kli sharis will only sanctify what goes inside of it, only if you intentionally want it to become sanctified. And therefore, in our case, if you're bringing it from the day before Shabbos, so it's very simple. If there's an issue that it's going to become pasul with being overnight, just don't have in mind that you want to be makdish it. So really, minatayre, there wouldn't be any issue. But then there's a gzeira though. Gzeira shema yoimru ledas neskacho. The gzeira is people won't see this. People won't realize. People will say, look, they're drawing the water, and it seems like that he's drawing it for the purpose to be makdish the water for being used to pour in the mizbeach, and still they're leaving it overnight. They're using it for the next morning. So people are going to see. It's going to seem like they're using this water even though it was overnight. So that beside this gzeira, they didn't want that you should use it in a kli sharis. You just take a regular jug that people will notice and see that it wasn't kaddish, kedusha saguf yet. Rab Yanai, Rab Zeira, another pshat. This is also a gzeira. Rab Yanai said in the name of Rab Zeira. The Mefarshim actually point out that this name here is strange because Rab Yanai was a much earlier generation than Rab Zeira. Rab Yanai was the Rebbe of many Amiroim, many of the earlier Amiroim. Rab Yechanan and many great Amiroim learned by Rab Yanai. And Rab Zeira was the student from later Amiroim. So how could Rab Yanai be saying something in the name of Rab Zeira? Some take out the name Rab Zeira. Some say that there's 2 different Rab Yanais. And another version is just switch it around. Omer Rab Zeira, Omer Rab Yanai. Rab Zeira said it in the name of Rab Yanai. Okay, so his answer is, Afilatema, I can even tell you as follows. So now, just to explain this, according to Chizkiya, we are still going with the perspective over here that the water, the amount of water that you use for the nisa, for pouring on the mizbeach, there's no maximum amount. You could have as whatever water you put inside could be part of the mitzvah. So therefore, if you put more than 3 lugim, this is going to be used on the mizbeach. It's going to be in the skadish, in the keli, to be poured on the mizbeach. Right? And therefore he said that the gzeira is that people won't realize whether the person is doing it midas or not midas. But Abzeira comes and says as follows: Afilateme yashir lamayim. Even if you're going to say that there's a very specific amount, not only a minimum, but also a maximum of how much is poured on the mizbeach. 3 lugim, not more and not less. Right? So there, if you're going to fill up the keli more than 3 lugim, it's really not an issue, because now people realize that you're filling it up more than it's supposed to be, and therefore it does not become kaddish in the keli. So yashir l'mayim, there is a certain maximum, and therefore mitzad that, there's really no issue of filling it up before. And also klisharis ein mekatchen ela midas. And klisharis, you could only be makdish it if you intentionally want it to become kaddish, then it becomes kaddish. So therefore, in our case, there's absolutely no issue of filling it up on Friday for Shabbos. It's not going to become kaddish at all. So what is
regular
it's
water.
just going to be regular water overnight. Then the next morning you'll put it into another keli, you'll be makdish it midas and the right amount. But if you're drawing it from before and it's not the right amount, and you're not even having in mind to be makdish it, so then there's no issue b'chlal. But there was a gzeira though. The gzeira is as follows: Shema Yaimru. Maybe people are going to say lekiddush yadayim v'raglayim milon. Maybe when he fills up this water, who says it was being filled up for the nisach hamayim? If the nisach hamayim is only supposed to be exactly 3 lugin, and you're filling up more than that, so it's going to look like you're probably not filling it up for nisach hamayim. You're filling it up for something else. You're filling it up to wash the hands and feet of the kohen. If you remember, we once learned in Masechta Yuma that when they washed the hands and the feet by the kohen, it was not only from the kier. Usually it was from the kier, but on Yom Kippur, Lamashal, the kohen gadol would wash his hands and feet from another basin which they prepared for him. It was actually a golden basin that they prepared for him to wash his hands and feet. So therefore, over here, it could be that it's being filled up for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. For kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, the amount of water that's used, there's no shiur for that. You can be whatever amount of water you put in. That's what the water that you're going to be using. So therefore, if it's filled up for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, so then even if it's much more water, it's still going to be an amount that's usable for that purpose, and therefore it could become kaddish in the keli. And people won't realize what your das is. Are you thinking that it should be? Are you having the intention that it should be kaddish? Are you not having that intention? So it'll look like that what you filled up became kaddish, and you're leaving it overnight. And then overnight, the next day, you're using it for the nesachim, to pour for the water on the mizbeach. So therefore, there's still a gzeira that people might say that you could use water that stayed overnight for the mitzvah. So that's the gzeira over here. So there's two different opinions over here, Chizkiya and Rabbi Yanai, what exactly the gzeira was. But the point is the same, that there's a gzeira that people might say, even though the fact is that it's not kaddish, but people might not realize this, and they'll think that overnight that it became puzzle, and still you're using it. Sagt the Gemara.
You could have put in 2 lugim.
You could.
They could have put
Less.
Yeah.
But they need 3 though.
Okay, so you use 2 different.
2 different kalim. So if that's going to work, okay, I hear what you're saying.
And sukkahs, they're not equal to the shiur to use for kiddush yadayim, right?
Right, usually not. But you could though. Apparently they did. They would bring more water that was used for the kainim.
Was it from the stream in the base of Mikdash?
Yeah. That's what it says there. That's what Rashi over here brings. Nishbecha, sagt the Gemara, Nishbecha eines galsachulu. So the water that spilled or it got exposed. Overnight it remained exposed, or an extended period of time that it remained exposed. So then that's water that can't be used for the nisach hamayim. So the Gemara explains why not. Why can't you use this water that was exposed? So the issue is that we're afraid that a snake went and drank from the water and left its venom in the water. So the Gemara asks, if that's the issue, why is this a problem? Why don't you strain this water, and when you strain it, it will keep the venom out from the water. So the Gemara is actually going to bring a machlokes about this here. What happens when you strain water that has venom of a snake inside? Does that venom remain out on top of the strainer, or does it actually just flow through the holes together with the rest of the water? So the Gemara brings a machlokes. Leime, so the fact that the Mishnah does not give this eitzah that you can do this, so shall we say, masnisim the loiker Rab Nechemia. The Mishnah here is not like the opinion of Rab Nechemia. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa as follows. Misanenes, if you have a strainer, what this is talking about is you have sort of a barrel, and the barrel is divided into two. You have what's at the bottom, and then on the top. And on the between the bottom and the top, there's sort of a strainer. And this is usually used when they want to make wine in a way with spices, and they put the spices on top inside the strainer, and then you pour the wine through the spices, and it gets the taste, and it goes down into the barrel below, and that's so now you have this strainer, and so there's a halacha. Any water, wine, things that are left uncovered overnight, so then you're afraid that there's a snake that came and drank of it, so now it's a sakana to drink from it. So you're not allowed to drink from this. Bisman as that, it says in Shulchan Aruch, because we don't have snakes around where we live, so we're not concerned about this. But in a time when they did, so then there's an issue, yesh by mishum gilui. So the water that's, or wine or whatever it is that was left in a place where there's a strainer, there is an issue that this was left open, and therefore you can't drink from it. In other words, whether what's in the barrel at the bottom, whether if there's any liquid that's on the top, in the strainer, whatever it is, doesn't make a difference. It's left open, and you can't drink from it. Rab Nechemya says it depends. When is there an issue of something that's left exposed? If the barrel below was left exposed to completely open, so then then you can't drink from it. But if the barrel below was covered with the strainer that's on top of it, even if on top it was open, there's no issue of the barrel below being considered exposed, because the venom of a snake is similar to a sponge. It floats and it remains in its place on top, which means that the liquid, whatever, let's say it's wine, it's going to flow through the strainer, and the venom is going to stay on the top. That's the nature of this venom. It's not going to come through the strainer, it's going to stay on the top, and therefore what's on the bottom, as long as it was covered by the strainer, it's not an issue. It's not considered to be exposed. So the Gemara is saying that the same thing seems to be over here in our Mishnah. When the Mishnah over here says that there's an issue with using this water for pouring on the Mizbeach because it was exposed and you have the venom of the snake inside, why doesn't the Mishnah just allow you to strain it? The answer is because the Tana Kama holds that straining doesn't help. Rab Nechemya says straining would help. It would keep the venom out. The Tana Kama says no, it does not help. Interesting machlokes. Apparently they're arguing about the nature of this venom of the snake, whether the strainer helps or not. Huh?
It's not something we can find out.
You can just test it and see what happens. It's a good question. I don't know, but they seem to be arguing about this. They seem to be arguing about this fact over here. What happens to this venom? So the Gemara says no. It's not, what it says in our Mishnah is not dependent on that machlokes. Our Mishnah that says that you cannot use this water follows even Rab Nechemya's opinion that says that the strainer will leave the venom out. When was Rab Nechemya saying that you can drink this? That's for a plain person that wants to drink the water and know that it's safe. But over here, when we're talking about using the water to pour in the Mizbeach, mi Amar, did Rab Nechemya say that in such a case you should use the water that a snake drank from it? Does Rab Nechemya not hold of what it says in the following pasuk? If you're bringing something, lefechasecha means a minister or a prominent person. So if you're bringing him something to a governor, okay, you're bringing something to a prominent person, and you're bringing him something which is broken or in bad condition, hayirtzacha, will he be appeased by this? Or yayisa panecha, will he accept this from you? If you're bringing him something that's not good quality, the pasuk there talks about someone bringing a carbon that's not that has a mum and it's not in good condition. B'chlal. So will the Eibishter accept such a kind of carbon? Hashem says. So over here as well, when you have water that a snake drank from it, so yes, could be that the safety, you can strain it and so on, but it's not good quality water. It's not nice to bring the Eibishter this to pour it on the Mizbeach as a carbon. So therefore even Rab Nechemya would agree that it should not be used, if it was left exposed, it should not be used to be poured on the Mizbeach. Hadran alach lulav araves. This is the conclusion of the fourth Perek of Masechta Sukkah. Zok Mishnah. So this is going back to what it said in the previous Mishnah, in the first Mishnah of the previous Perek, regarding the flute that they would blow with by the Simchas Beis HaShev and the Beis HaMikdash. So it said in the Mishnah before, HaChalil, so with this flute that they used, Chamisha Vishisha. Sometimes it was 5 days of Sukkot and sometimes 6 days. So the Mishnah explains what this Chalil is. Zehu ha-Chalil shal beis ha-sheyeva. This is the Chalil that they blew with when they drew the water and brought it into the Beis HaMikdash. This was all night. This was the Simchas Beis HaSheva in the Beis HaMikdash. They would stand on the stairs of the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara is going to describe it later. And they would play with the flute and sing and dance the whole night. She'ein deiche lo yis ha-Shabbos v'lo yis ha-Yom Tov. So this, blowing with the flute, is not push off, not Shabbos, and not Yontif. So we understand how it's sometimes 5 days and sometimes 6 days. If Shabbos falls out on Yontif, so then you have another 6 days. If Shabbos falls out on a day of Chol HaMoed, so then you just have another 5 days to blow with the flute. Itmer, we learned the following machlokes regarding the lashon of our Mishnah. Rav Yehuda v'Rav Eina argued, Chatani shoyeva. One of them learned in the Mishnah the language that we just had, Simchas Beis Hashayeva, the Simcha of where they drew the water. V'chatani Chashuva. Another one learned Simchas Beis Chashuva, or some say even without the word Beis, Chashuva, a Chashuva, a very prominent Simcha. The Gemara explains, Amma Mazutre, Man de Tani Shayeva, the one that had the version in our Mishnah, Shayeva loy mishtabish. It's not a mistake, it's the right version in the Mishnah. Man de Tani Chashuva loy mishtabish. And the one that learns Chashuva is also not making a mistake. Man de Tani Shayeva loy mishtabish, Tichsev, Usha'aftem mayim besassen. Sha'aftem says to draw, that you draw the water with joy, and that was the Simchas Beis HaSheva. The one that says Chashuva also is not making a mistake. The Omer Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman said mitzvah Chashuvahi. This mitzvah of pouring the water that is on the Mizbeach is a very Chashuva mitzvah. This is from the Eibusher prepared the funnel that goes under the Mizbeach all the way down to the Tahaim from Sheishis and Mebreshis, as we learned in the Gemara yesterday. So therefore it's a very Chashuva mitzvah. That's the term that Chashuva means over here. Tana Rabbanon, we learned in the Braise a machlokes about this. HaChalil doiches HaShabbos. Divrei Rav Yosef bar Yehuda. Rav Yosef bar Yehuda argues with our Mishnah, and he says blowing with the flute does push off Shabbos. The Chachamim says af Yontif eredeichem. Not only does it not push off Shabbos, but it doesn't push off Yontif either. So what are they actually arguing about? Are they arguing about using the flute for the Simchas Beis HaSheyeva, like in our Mishnah? So the Gemara will now explain, no, they're arguing about something else. Amar Rav Yosef, machlokes, this argument here regarding blowing the flute on Shabbos and Yontif is b'shir shel carbon. That's regarding singing by the carbon. When you pour the nisach hayayin, when you pour the wine, or maybe even the nisach hamayim, pouring the water on the Mizbeach as well, but during the time, when they poured that, the wine and the water on the Mizbeach, then the Levim would sing. And the argument is, at that time, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, could they use the flute to sing? To sing? That's the machlokes. So what's the basis of the machlokes? The Rabbi Yossi's opinion is, Iker Shira Bekeli, the main Aveda of the Levim, which was to sing. So the main singing is with a keli, is with a musical instrument, in this case a flute. And therefore, va'avaydehi. This is that, just like the avayda of the kainim to do shchita and everything else pushes off Shabbos. So the Levim, which have to sing, they're singing primarily with a musical instrument. So it's an avayda v'deiches Shabbos. It pushes off Shabbos like every avayda in the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbanan Savri, but on the other hand, the Rabbanan's opinion is ikashira b'peh, that the main mitzvah of the kainim doing their avayda, the Levim that is, doing their avayda and blowing, and singing is with the mouth. They used to sing. That's the main singing. Valav avedi. So then the musical instrument, the flute, was just like to make it more beautiful, but that wasn't the main aveda. So therefore, Shabbos. It doesn't push off Shabbos. So that's what their argument is about. What's the main aveda? The main aveda is to sing with your mouth, or is the main aveda to sing with a musical instrument, with a flute? But what our Mishnah was speaking about, this that they used to blow with flutes during the night when they brought the water in, Divrei HaKoil Simchihi, over there everybody agrees that the purpose of that's not an Aveda. That's just to increase the Simcha, to add to the Simcha that there was. Shabbos. Since it's not an Aveda, it for sure is not going to push off Shabbos like it said in our Mishnah. Nobody argues about that. So this machlokes here between Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda and Chachamim, so in Chassidus it explains that the Aveda of the Levium, to blow with the flute or a musical instrument, and also to sing by mouth, is two different aspects of the shira. That there's the shir of the nefesh lakis, and there's the shir of the nefesh bahamis. when a person blows with a musical instrument, so that refers to a lower level, that you're using a gashmis de gekeli, you're using an instrument to create a musical sound. So that resembles the Aveda that a person comes to what should sing, what should create the musical note, gashmis. Even his nefesh abama should sing. Then there's singing with your mouth, which comes from the nefesh, from the person himself. That's the singing of the neshama. So there's two different aspects of the singing in the Beis HaMikdash, the nefesh alakis and the nefesh bahamis. It explains the Chassidus that this is also the lashon that we say every day in the beginning of davening. Shirulai and zamrulai. Shirulai is singing by mouth. Zamrulai, zemer is kli zemer. That refers to a musical instrument. So when you begin davening, so you say you're going to sing to Hashem, you're going to sing with your mouth, singing with your neshama, and you're going to sing also with a musical instrument, which means even my guf, even the gashmis will also sing. So here in the Gemara, apparently there's a machlokes in the Aveda of the Leviim to sing in the Beis HaMikdash, which aspect of the singing is the main inyan of the Aveda. Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef now comes and explains, Mino Amina, how do I know? What's my source? The Baha, or the Bach says, the Bahachi Pligi, that this is what their machlokes is. Their machlokes is, what's the main Aveda? Is the main Aveda with a musical instrument, or is the main Aveda singing by mouth? The Tanya, my source is the following Braisa, because we learned, it says, Kli Sharis, Shasan Shal Eitz. Any of the Kli Sharis, any of the vessels in the Beis HaMikdash that were made out of wood, Rabbi Paisel, Rabbi says it's possible. The klishadas have to be made from metal, whether it's gold, silver, but not wood. Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda machsher. Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda says that even if it was made from wood, it still could be used in the Beis HaMikdash. So now what's the basis of their machlokes? Where do we see that klishadas is made out of wood? My lav bahaka mifligi. Don't you think the source of their machlokes is as follows? The only klishadas where you find in the Beis HaMikdash that was always made out of wood is the flute. A flute, in order for the flute to make the proper musical note, it has to be made out of wood. That's the way the flute is made. So therefore, the question is, this flute that was used to sing within the Beis HaMikdash, is it a keli that's being used for Aveda? Is that a klishadas or not? So we can say as follows, My lav bahaka mifliki. So don't you think that their argument is as follows? Man, the machsher, the one that says that any klishadas that you make of wood is good, savar, he holds, ikashira bekeli. The main singing of the Leviim was with the musical instrument, with the flute. And therefore, just like the flute is made out of wood, so I say that every klishadas can be made out of wood as well. And the Gemara explains, V'yalfinon mi'abuva de Moshe. I learn out from the flute, the original flute that was made from Moshe Rabbeinu. What was the flute of Moshe Rabbeinu made of? It was made out of wood. There's a Gemara in Erechin that talks about this, which Rashi brings, that it was a wooden flute, and then there was a certain point that they wanted to plate it with gold, just like a lot of other things in the Mishkan. For example, the menorah, the shulchan, they were made, not the shulchan, but, not the menorah, but things that were made out of wood, and they plated it with gold. So they took this flute from Moshe Rabbeinu that they had, and they wanted to plate it with gold, but it didn't give out the same sound. It wasn't good. So the abuva of Moshe, the flute of Moshe Rabbeinu, was made out of wood. So just like the flute is made out of wood, any other klishadas could be made out of wood. Why? Because the musical instrument is also a klishadas. That's the main aveda. But the other opinion holds, man, the apostle Savar, the one that says that klishadas, Rebbe, that says the klishadas cannot be made out of wood. So Savar, he holds ikashira bepeh. The main aveda of singing of the Leviim is singing with their mouth. V'layalfina me'abuva. You don't learn out me'abuva de Moshe. You don't learn out from the flute that they use. The flute is just to make it more beautiful. But the main aveda is the voice that they sang with. So therefore, this is not considered to be a klishadas. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the basis of this machlokes. Loi, I can say the basis of the machlokes is different. The kula alma, they both agree, ikeshira bekeli, the main aveda of the Leviim to sing is with the musical instrument. And vahacha, and over here, what's the argument? Whether the rest of the klishadas could be made out of wood or not. The argument is as follows. Bidonin efsher mishi'i efsher kemifligi. What they're arguing about is, could I compare a case of something where you have possibilities, you have options. All the klishadas in the Beis HaMikdash don't have to be made out of wood. It could be made out of wood, or it could be made out of metal, gold. It could be made out of, it doesn't have to be made out of wood. But the question now is, could I learn out from the flute? Because the flute must be made out of wood. That's the only way it's going to give out the bright musical note. So the argument is, could I compare to a case where there is no other option? Man the machshasavar. So the one Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda that says that it's kosher to make any klisharis out of wood, so he holds danin efsher mishii efsher. I could learn out, I could bring a source even from the flute, even though over there was no other option. But the fact is, it was made out of wood. So I could learn from there that all klisharis could be made out of wood as well. Aman the pasul, but the one that says that it's pasul, which is Rebbe, so he says, Sava, he holds, no, loy danin, or the Bach says, aim danin efsher mishii efsher. You can't compare. The flute was made out of wood because there's no other way how to make the flute. But in any other klisharis which could be made out of metal, it should be made out of metal, never, not out of wood. So you can't learn out from a case where there is no other option. Now the Gemara says a third pshat in the machlokes over here. The kula alma, everybody agrees. The ikashira bepet. When it comes to the aveda of the Levium singing, the main aveda was they sang with their voice. Ve'ein danen efsher mishii efsher. And also, everybody would agree, you can't compare all klisharis, where you have options of what to make it from. You can't compare it to the flute, where there is no other option. It could only be made out of wood. What's the argument over here? Over here, there's another source. There's Bechlal, an argument regarding all klisharis, because there's a pasuk. And there's a V'hacha b'melef menoida. There's an argument regarding the pasuk that it says by menoida, Beklali uprati oy beribuye umiyute. How do you darshan the pasuk by Minaira? Do you darshan it as a klal prata klal, or do you darshan it as a ribuy miyate ribuy? What's the pasuk that it says by Minaira? So it says in the pasuk, the Gemara is going to quote the pasuk here in a moment. Vasisa minairas zahav, and then it says again miksha te'asa minaira. So this is what's called the klal prata klal. First the pasuk says vasisa minaira. You should make a minaira. So that means make a minaira of any material. Then the pasuk spells out specifically what the material should be. Zahav, it has to be gold. And then it says again, Miksha teyasa menaira, make the menaira, it should be one piece, but it doesn't say what material. So this is a klal, a prata klal. So there's two ways how you darshan such a pasuk. There's two methods. One method is klal, a prata klal. Another method is ribuy, miyat ribuy. When the Torah says first a klal, and then a prat, and then a klal, either is, so let's see, we'll learn the Gemara inside, we'll see what it says here. Zak the Gemara azay. Rabbi Yosi by Yehuda darish, the way Rabbi Yosi by Yehuda darshans the pasuk is, ribuy umiyute, that you're marbe, and then you're memayit. That's the way you darshan. I'll explain in a moment. Rabbi darish, klali uprati. Rabbi darshans the pasuk, that you have to darshan it as a klal, and then a prat. So here, let's look at the pasuk itself. Vasisa menoiras. The pasuk begins saying Vasisa menoiras klal. That's a klal. That's saying make a menoira of whatever material. Then it says zahav tahir, that has to be pure gold. Prat, here the Torah specifies that has to be gold. Then it says again miksha teyasa menoira. You should make the menoira one piece. Chazav v'kolal. The Torah again is saying a klal that it could be made of any material. So how do we darshan this? Klal uprata klal. When the Torah starts off with a klal, then it specifies, and then it says a klal again. The way I darshan this is as follows: Iyat tadon elo ke'ena prat. The Torah here is saying that it's not only the prat; it doesn't have to be made only of gold, but it has to be made of a material that's similar to gold. What does that mean? Ma prat mefurish shel matchis. Just like what the Torah specifies in the middle is gold, so it has to be a metal. Afkal shel matchis. Even if you want to use any other material, it has to be dafka from a metal, like gold itself. So in other words, the point of a klal prat klal is, because the Torah writes a prat in between two klalim, I am going to be marbe that it doesn't have to be dafka from gold, but the klal has to be similar to the prat. You could only be marbe something which is similar to gold, in this case, any type of metal, not anything else. In other words, not wood. Wood is not a metal. That's the way Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda darshans it. Okay, who are we over here? This is Rebbe's drasha actually. Sorry, this was Rebbe. Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda darish. The way Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda darshans this pasuk is ribuy umiyuti. You darshan the pasuk with a different method, which is called the method of ribuy umiyuti, and the Gemara explains. Vasisa menairas riba. When the Torah says menaira, it's marbe. It includes everything. You can make the menaira with any material. Then it says zahav toir miyit. Zahav toir is coming to be memayit. It's coming to minimize. Only gold. Then it says again miksha teyasa menaira chazav riba. The Torah is adding again, saying you can make it from anything. Riba umiyet v'riba. So the method we use is riba miyet riba. What does this mean? Riba koil. This method says because the Torah was marba in the beginning and marba at the end, we're marba anything. You can make it of any material. My Rabbi kol mili. You marba everything. My miyet. But the Torah did write Zav Torah in the middle, only gold. Why did the Torah specify only gold in the middle? It has to be memait, something. So miyet shel cheres. It comes to minimize it. Don't make it out of earthenware. So in other words, the point of the difference between these two methods of darshaning the pasuk, well, if you say klal prat to klal, it only has to be something that's similar to the prat. Right? It has to be daima to the prat, which is metal. Whereas if you say ribui miyet ribui, we're marba everything. You can use anything. The miyot is only memait one specific thing, which is cheres, which is earthenware. But wood, even though wood is not similar to metal, but as long as it's not earthenware, you can use it for the menaita, and that's the basis of the machlokes of Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda.
And why cheres and not something else?
Because I guess cheres is a very, very inferior quality. Cheres is not coveted for the Beis HaMikdash, so therefore memait dafke cheres. That's the least, the least lowest quality.